Book 11. Those of Former Eras. Chapter 1. 1. The master said, "The men of former times, in the matters of ceremonies and music, were rustics, it is said, while the men of these latter times, in ceremonies and music, are accomplished gentlemen." 2. If I have occasion to use those things, I follow the men of former times. Chapter 2. 1. The master said, "Of those who were with me in Chan and Say, there are none to be found to enter my door." 2. Distinguished for their virtuous principles and practice, there were Yen Yuan, Min HSIEN, Zan Po Niu, and Chung Kung. For their ability in speech, Sai Wo and Tzze Kung. For their admonies tradive talents, Zan Yu and Kai Lu. For their literary acquirements, Tzeu and Tzze Sha. Chapter 3. The master said, "Wei gives me no assistance. There is nothing that I say in which he does not delight." Chapter 4. The master said, "Filial indeed is Min Tzze Chian. Other people say nothing of him different from the report of his parents and brothers." Chapter 5. Nan Young was frequently repeating the lines about a white scepter stone. Confucius gave him the daughter of his elder brother to wife. Chapter 6. Kai Kong asked which of the disciples loved to learn. Confucius replied to him, "There was Yen Wei, he loved to learn. Unfortunately, his appointed time was short, and he died. Now there is no one who loves to learn, as he did." Chapter 7. 1. When Yen Yuan died, Yen Lu begged the carriage of the master to sell and get an outer shell for his son's coffin. 2. The master said, "Everyone calls his son, whether he has talents or has not talents." There was Li. When he died, he had a coffin but no outer shell. I would not walk on foot to get a shell for him, because, having followed in the rear of the great officers, it was not proper that I should walk on foot. Chapter 8. When Yen Yuan died, the master said, "Alas! Heaven is destroying me. Heaven is destroying me." Chapter 9. 1. When Yen Yuan died, the master bewailed him exceedingly, and the disciples who were with him said, "Master, your grief is excessive?" 2. Is it excessive? Said he. 3. If I am not to mourn bitterly for this man, for whom should I mourn? Chapter 10. 1. When Yen Yuan died, the disciples wished to give him a great funeral, and the master said, "You may not do so." 2. The disciples did bury him in great style. 3. The master said, "Wei behaved towards me as his father. I have not been able to treat him as my son. The fault is not mine. It belongs to you, O disciples." Chapter 11. Kai Lu asked about serving the spirits of the dead. The master said, "While you are not able to serve men, how can you serve their spirits?" Kai Lu added, "I venture to ask about death?" He was answered, "While you do not know life, how can you know about death?" Chapter 12. 1. The disciple Min was standing by his side, looking bland and precise. Tzze Lu, looking bold and soldierly. Zan Yu and Tzze Kung, with a free and straightforward manner. The master was pleased. 2. He said, "You, there. He will not die a natural death." Chapter 13. 1. Some parties in Lu were going to take down and rebuild the long treasury. 2. Min Tzze Chian said, "Suppose it were to be repaired after its old style, why must it be altered and made anew?" 3. The master said, "This man seldom speaks. When he does, he is sure to hit the point." Chapter 14. 1. The master said, "What has the loot of you to do in my door?" 2. The other disciples began not to respect Tzze Lu. The master said, "Yu has ascended to the hall, though he has not yet passed into the inner apartments." Chapter 15. 1. Tzze Kung asked which of the two, Shi or Shang, was the superior. The master said, "Shi goes beyond the due mean, and Shang does not come up to it." 2. Then, Said Tzee Kung, the superiority is with she, I suppose. 3. The master said, to go beyond is as wrong as to fall short. Chapter 16. 1. The head of the Kai family was richer than the Duke of Chao had been, and yet Chiu collected his imposts for him and increased his wealth. 2. The master said, he is no disciple of mine. My little children, beat the drum and assail him. Chapter 17. 1. Che is simple. 2. Shan is dull. 3. She is specious. 4. Yu is coarse. Chapter 18. 1. The master said, there is Wei. He has nearly attained to perfect virtue. He is often in want. 2. Sazé does not acquiesce in the appointments of heaven, and his goods are increased by him. Yet his judgments are often correct. Chapter 19. Tzee Chong asked what were the characteristics of the good man. The master said, he does not tread in the footsteps of others, but moreover, he does not enter the chamber of the sage. Chapter 20. The master said, if, because a man's discourse appears solid and sincere, we allow him to be a good man, is he really a superior man? Or is his gravity only an appearance? Chapter 21. Tzee Lu asked whether he should immediately carry into practice what he heard. The master said, there are your father and elder brothers to be consulted. Why should you act on that principle of immediately carrying into practice what you hear? Zan Yu asked the same, whether he should immediately carry into practice what he heard, and the master answered, immediately carry into practice what you hear. Kung Shi Hua said, you asked whether he should carry immediately into practice what he heard, and you said, there are your father and elder brothers to be consulted. Chiu asked whether he should immediately carry into practice what he heard, and you said, carry it immediately into practice. I, Chai, am perplexed, and venture to ask you for an explanation. The master said, Chiu is retiring and slow, therefore, I urged him forward. Yu has more than his own share of energy, therefore I kept him back. Chapter 22. The master was put in fear in Kawang and Yen Yuan fell behind. The master, on his rejoining him, said, I thought you had died. Wei replied, while you were alive, how should I presume to die? Chapter 23. 1. Kai Tzee Zan asked whether Chung Yu and Zan Chiu could be called great ministers. 2. The master said, I thought you would ask about some extraordinary individuals, and you only ask about Yu and Chiu. 3. What is called a great minister is one who serves his prince according to what is right, and when he finds he cannot do so, retires. 4. Now, as to Yu and Chiu, they may be called ordinary ministers. 5. Tzee Zan said, then they will always follow their chief, will they? 6. The master said, in an act of parricide or regicide, they would not follow him. Chapter 24. 1. Tzee Lu got Tzee Cao appointed governor of Pai. 2. The master said, you are injuring a man's son. 3. Tzee Lu said, there are, common people and officers. There are the altars of the spirits of the land and grain. Why must one read books before he can be considered to have learned? 4. The master said, it is on this account that I hate your glib-tongued people. Chapter 25. 1. Tzee Lu, Sang Shi, Zan Yu, and Kung Shi Hua were sitting by the master. 2. He said to them, though I am a day or so older than you, do not think of that. 3. From day to day you are saying, we are not known. If some ruler were to know you, what would you like to do? 4. Tzee Lu hastily and lightly replied, suppose the case of a state of 10,000 chariots. Let it be straitened between other large states. Let it be suffering from invading armies, and to this let there be added a famine in corn and in all vegetables. If I were entrusted with the government of it, in 3 years' time I could make the people to be bold, and to recognize the rules of righteous conduct. The master smiled at him. 5. Turning to Yen Yu, he said, Shiyu, what are your wishes? Shiyu replied, suppose a state of 60 or 70 li square, or one of 50 or 60, and let me have the government of it. In 3 years' time, I could make plenty to abound among the people. As to teaching them the principles of propriety and music, I must wait for the rise of a superior man to do that. 6. What are your wishes, Chai? Said the master next to Kung Shi Hua. Chai replied, I do not say that my ability extends to these things, but I should wish to learn them. At the services of the ancestral temple, and at the audiences of the princes with the sovereign, I should like, dressed in the dark square-made robe and the black linen cap, to act as a small assistant. 7. Last of all, the master asked Sang Shi, Tian, what are your wishes? Tian, pausing as he was playing on his lute, while it was yet twanging, laid the instrument aside, and rose. My wishes, he said, are different from the cherished purposes of these 3 gentlemen. What harm is there in that? Said the master. Do you also, as well as they, speak out your wishes? Tian then said, in this, the last month of spring, with the dress of the season all complete, along with 5 or 6 young men who have assumed the cap, and 6 or 7 boys, I would wash in the eye, enjoy the breeze among the rain altars, and return home singing. The master heaved a sigh and said, I give my approval to Tian. 8. The 3 others having gone out, Sang Shi remained behind, and said, what do you think of the words of these 3 friends? The master replied, they simply told each one his wishes. 9. Shi pursued, Master, why did you smile at you? 10. He was answered, the management of a state demands the rules of propriety. His words were not humble, therefore I smiled at him. 11. Shi again said, but was it not a state which Chiu proposed for himself? The reply was, yes. Did you ever see a territory of 60 or 70 li or one of 50 or 60, which was not a state? 12. Once more, Shi inquired, and was it not a state which Chai proposed for himself? The master again replied, yes. Who but princes have to do with ancestral temples, and with audiences but the sovereign? If Chai were to be a small assistant in these services, who could be a great one?